Okay, so when you hear the word audit, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of us, it sounds stressful, right? Kind of intimidating. But what if I told you that auditing is actually one of the most important tools we have for building trust in our modern world? Let's dive in and see how auditing really works as the bedrock of our financial confidence.
To really get why auditing is so crucial, let's just imagine for a second a world without it. Picture it. Every financial claim, every company report, everything comes with this giant invisible question mark hanging over it. That's a world of unchecked risk, and it's the exact problem that auditing was invented to solve. I mean, really think about it. You're an investor, or maybe a bank, or you're just curious. Someone hands you a company's financial report. And hey, the numbers look amazing, but there's that nagging question in the back of your mind. How do you know they're real? How can you be sure they weren't just made up or that there isn't some huge, simple mistake buried in there? Well, that uncertainty has a name. Professionals call it information risk. It's the constant possibility that the data you're betting on is just wrong. It could be a simple human error, it could be outright fraud, or it could just be that the people who wrote the report have different goals than the people reading it. So the big question is, how do we fight this risk and actually build some confidence? And that right there brings us to the solution. It's humanity's best weapon against information risk, the audit. So let's pull back the curtain and take a closer look at what this process is really all about and how it manages to create trust out of uncertainty. Okay, I know that sounds like a super formal textbook definition, but trust me, every single word in there is critical. Auditing isn't just checking the numbers. It's a very specific, structured process of gathering, evaluating, and then reporting. And it really breaks down into 3 simple steps. See? When you look at it like this, it's much more straightforward. First, the auditor has to gather evidence. Second, they take that evidence and they evaluate it against some kind of established criteria. Think accounting standards or tax laws. And third, they report what they found. But that first step, gather evidence, that's where the real detective work happens. And this might surprise you, but the word evidence here is incredibly broad. We're not just talking about spreadsheets. No way. Auditors are digging into physical invoices, they're independently verifying bank statements, they're interviewing staff members, and even reading through the minutes of board meetings. It is a full 360-degree investigation to get the whole story. Now, this is a super common point of confusion, so let's clear it up right now. Think of it like this. Accounting is like writing the book. It's the process of recording all the financial events as they happen. Auditing, on the other hand, is like being the editor. The auditor comes in after the book is written to make sure it's telling a true story and that it accurately reflects reality. So we get the process, but who are the people actually doing all this? Who are these professional editors? Well, these are the watchdogs of the financial world, and they basically come in 2 flavors, the ones inside the company and the ones on the outside looking in. But before we get into the different types, let's be clear on something that is absolutely non-negotiable. An auditor has to be competent. They need the skills to do the job right. But just as important, if not more so, they have to be independent. That means they're unbiased, with no personal stake in the outcome. That independence is everything. It's the entire source of their credibility. Okay, so the big differences between these 2 types of audits really come down to who they work for. External audits, they're often required by law. They're done by totally independent firms who answer to the shareholders, the actual owners of the company. Internal audits are different. They're done by the company's own employees to help management find ways to improve things, and they report up to the board of directors, not to the general public. Now, you might be thinking this whole thing is just for giant, publicly traded companies. But actually, the need for this kind of verification is way, way more widespread than you'd think. Seriously, the need for audits is everywhere. A startup trying to get that first big round of funding, they need a clean audit to win over investors. A nonprofit, they need one to prove to donors that their money is being spent wisely. Even government agencies get audited to maintain public trust. Auditing is, at its core, a fundamental pillar of any economy that's built on trust. So it's also helpful to realize that auditing doesn't just exist in its own little bubble. It's part of a much bigger ecosystem of professional services, and they're all designed to do one thing, really, improve the quality of information so that all of us can make better, smarter decisions.
So, the broadest category, the big umbrella that covers everything, is called assurance services. Just think of it like this: any independent service that boosts the quality and confidence of information for people making decisions, that falls under this umbrella. A financial audit is the most famous example, for sure, but it is far from the only one. Now, tucked under that big umbrella, we have a slightly more specific category called attestation services. The key thing to remember here is that these services always result in a formal, written report about information that came from someone else. Since a financial audit always ends with a written auditor's report, it's a perfect example of an attestation service. So, what else is in this category? Well, you've got the classic financial statement audit we've been talking about, but you also have things like a review, which is kind of like a light version of an audit that gives a lower level of assurance. Or you could have a report that just looks specifically at how well a company's internal security systems are working.
And finally, you have all the other stuff that accounting professionals do that has nothing to do with verifying information for outsiders. This bucket is called, you guessed it, non-audit services. This is probably the work you already associate with accounting firms, preparing tax returns, giving strategic business advice, helping with bookkeeping, or even doing forensic investigations to find fraud. All of this is super valuable work, but it's totally distinct from the core mission of an audit, which is all about that independent verification. So, this is the thought I want to leave you with. Auditing was created to build trust in financial numbers. But today, our world runs on all kinds of information, right? From a company's claims about data privacy to its sustainability reports. As our world gets faster and more complex, that fundamental human need for competent, independent verification is only going to grow. The real question is, what's the next frontier that's going to need an audit so that we can all continue to trust what we see?